So, want to transition to some other big news that was just announced yesterday that Bradley Beal is now strongly considering a trade from the Washington Wizards. He will likely make his decision ahead of the NBA free agents, the NBA draft, which is taking place this Thursday. And I've said this before that we're living in a new age of the NBA. Player mobility. LeBron James has really engendered player mobility and player empowerment. We're seeing every single star. It's not a matter of a lack of loyalty towards your organization. It's about where is the most conducive place for me to win an NBA title. LeBron obviously has left multiple places, Cleveland, Miami, back to Cleveland, to the Lakers. KD was drafted out of OKC. He left. Kawhi Leonard drafted out of San Antonio. He left. Anthony Davis drafted out of New Orleans. He left. Even Damian Lillard now, there are reports about there are conflicting reports about his long-term future in Portland. So this isn't a shock to me that Bradley Beal is announcing this now. To be honest, I've admired Bradley Beal for so long and have commended his loyalty and the trust and how dedicated he's been to this Washington Wizards franchise. He's been through the thick of it. The ups and the downs, the ebbs and the flows. He's played through the John Wall era, the 2 years post John Wall injuries where he tore his ACL and ruptured his Achilles in back-to-back seasons. He's been in the doghouse with this team, and he's now lived through the Russell Westbrook experiment. So Bradley Beal, I have a great deal of respect and admiration for him as a basketball player, for him as a talent. This guy has averaged over 22 points per game in 9 seasons with the Wizards. He averaged 31.3 points per game last year. Finished second in the scoring title behind Steph Curry, averaged 30 points per game last year. So he's been really starting to string together some fantastic individual seasons. And the Wizards had a fairly successful season, all things being considered. But with that being said, he's finally come to the realization that the Wizards are not the place that he can win an NBA title or even compete and contend realistically for an NBA title. That's become apparent. That's become evident to him. And so now I want to list out the 3 teams and the 3 destinations that not only would most benefit his services, because you could argue that every single NBA team would love to have Bradley Beal. He's an unselfish player, shoots the 3 ball extremely well. He's a floor spacer. He's everything you want. He doesn't have an ego, great teammate. So every team would love to have him, but I think mutually beneficial. These are the 3 best places for Bradley Beal, both to be traded to and for him to want to play for. So at number 1 is the Boston Celtics. Listen, we've lived through this Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown duo and this experiment before. And I love Jaylen Brown. And by the way, this package would have to revolve around Jaylen Brown and some draft picks and some types of assets being sent over to the Washington Wizards as well. But this is why this makes sense for both teams. First of all, for the Boston Celtics, as I said, we've seen the limit and the ceiling of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, don't get me wrong, Jaylen Brown took a major step this year, and Jason Tatum is emerging as a superstar. He's been ascending every single year. His points per game have gone up every single season. But you've got the childhood friendships that have already been fostered between Bradley Beal and Jason Tatum. These guys are childhood friends. They grew up 5 minutes away from each other. They played at the same high school. They're 5 years apart, but they've got that history there. And so you know that they would love to play together. Their rapport is absolutely fantastic. And so for the Boston Celtics, now you'd really have a formidable duo with Jason Tatum and Bradley Beal. Fine, you already shipped off Kemba Walker. Try to build around those 2 guys. They'd have enough star power to make some noise in the NBA's Eastern Conference this year. And for the Washington Wizards, you may not get a better individual talent back and a better established player back than Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown, for much of the season for the Celtics, was the Celtics' best player. He's a 2-way versatile player. ideal 3-and-D guy, but can also go create his own shot. He's obviously taken steps forward every single season. And you have some draft picks that you surround that package with. And now if you're the Wizards, you're saying to yourself, okay, we've got our cornerstone player. Not to mention Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. They play the same exact position. You're looking at the same guy. One is a designated natural 3. The other one's a designated 2, but they play the exact same position. This deal would make sense for both teams. At number 2 is the Philadelphia 76ers. I've talked about the activity that the 76ers are going to be involved with a lot this offseason. I expect them to stay active in the offseason because the bottom line is Ben Simmons is gone. And so this would have to be a trade revolving Ben Simmons. The 76ers trade Ben Simmons, and again, perhaps a cast of picks or some assets for Bradley Beal. Now, why would this make sense for the 76ers? Well, the 76ers, their priority isn't just having a stable point guard, who can play make for others. That's not what they need. They need another star that can go create his own shot, that can provide a scoring punch to complement Joel Embiid. The reason why the 76ers came up extremely short was not just because Ben Simmons couldn't shoot, because we know he could play make, we know he can defend, but he clogs up the middle for Joel Embiid. He didn't provide that additional scoring punch and that additional scoring threat that the 76ers needed. They need a guy who can actually go out and consistently drop 25 to 30 points with Joel Embiid. Now you've got Joel Embiid, Bradley Beal, and Tobias Harris. You can plug in any simple point guard with these guys. Doesn't matter. You can bring back TJ McConnell if you want from the Indiana Pacers, and that's a great starting 5 right there. So Bradley Beal is a floor spacer, shoots the 3 ball extremely well, which is an area of need for the 76ers. Seth Curry was really their only guy. Danny Green went down in the postseason. So you have Bradley Beal to that mix. You add him to that mix. Okay, now the 76ers are not only in the same position as far as perhaps finishing with the best record in the Eastern Conference, but now they actually have a legitimate shot of winning the Eastern Conference, competing with the likes of the Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets. That makes sense for them. And for the Washington Wizards, as I've said, you get in return your new franchise player, Ben Simmons, in still a big market, enough of a market where he'd be still excited to play for, because that's the other key. We know that Ben Simmons has a bit of, he's got some drama with him. He likes to be a showman, and he's kind of a little bit of a diva, kind of needs a big market to thrive in it, with his popularity to continue to burgeon and grow. And DC is a big enough market where he can still flourish and enjoy himself, and the expectations are going to be lowered substantially. So this works out for both of these teams, and that's the second best location. And at number 3, it's been talked about before, but the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors with Bradley Beal would be absolutely menacing. They'd be absolutely disgusting offensively, because where have the Golden State Warriors always excelled the most at is shooting, floor spacing, ball movement, unselfishness. And this is a Golden State Warriors team that could create a package around they got 2 lottery picks this year, number 7 and the number 14 pick, along with Andrew Wiggins. You form some type of package surrounding that, and now you've got something special in the works. Washington, you perhaps could be drafting 2 starting caliber players with Andrew Wiggins. You could fill your roster with 3 starters going into next year. So you can kind of start a fresh team with these guys. In Golden State, listen, in my opinion, they were going to be contending for an NBA title with or without Bradley Beal last year. I thought that they were preparing themselves to make this huge return. Obviously, the last 2 years, they've kind of been in NBA purgatory, and they had really just taken a nosedive to the bottom of the NBA poll. The last 2 years, they've just been accruing picks, accruing assets and capital. And so I thought that just with the return of Klay Thompson, with Steph, with Klay, with Draymond, with James Wiseman, they'd have enough to make a run at an NBA title. Now you throw in Bradley Beal. Yeah, they might be a little bit undersized in the backcourt. Steph at the 1, Beal at the 2, Thompson at the 3, then Draymond and James Wiseman. That's your starting 5. That's a championship winning starting 5 right there. And they shoot the ball at such a prolific level that if you add Bradley Beal, their perimeter game is going to be off the charts. Steph, Klay, and Bradley Beal on the floor together. You'd have to be absolutely strapped to them, to the hip. You'd have to be cinched to their hip and not allowing them to absolutely get a shot off at any time, which again, the range that all of them would have together would be absolutely devastating. Be absolutely devastating for any team. And so again, Wizards would be able to quickly rebuild in their own right. I think that this would be a trade that could work out for both teams. So those are the 3 locations, those are the 3 destinations that I think would work wonders for both. Bradley Beal, I think he'd be excited to go to either of those 3 places, and I think that what the Wizards would, and not to mention that would be the impetus for trading Russell Westbrook, because he would be kind of a lame duck point guard. And so you could probably trade him and collect more talent as well. So I think that this would be an incredible trade, either 3, because again, he wants to be traded to a contending team. And those 3 teams are contenders. Yes, I've heard murmurs about the Atlanta Hawks, and don't get me wrong, of course, they deserve a lot of credit. They reached the Eastern Conference Finals last year. And he and Trae Young with John Collins and Clint Capella would be a nice starting rotation. But I still like these other 3 locations a little bit